Hello, I'm going to show you today how to make your own beeswax food wraps. I've been making them for about 12-18 months now, and as a family we use them pretty regularly. So block of parmesan that we grate on top of our food, soups, etc. So this is quite a thin piece of cotton and it molds beautifully around this piece of cheese, and just using my body temperature, you see how it just seals it and keeps it nice and fresh. I have here, oh yes, when you've got a new food wrap that hasn't been used before, this is how you activate it. You basically scrunch it all up, give it a good scrunch, and look how is a little bit sticky, so it stays like that. That's the sign of a good food wrap. So then obviously straighten it out. And for instance, this piece of cheddar, because I could put it in this direction again, just wrap it nice and tight, tuck the ends under, just hold it for a few seconds, and that wraps the wax nice and snugly around the cheese. A bowl of soup, one leftover portion. Again, this is a circular food wrap. I use it as a lid, and again, just hold your hands on the food wrap for a few seconds, and your body temperature softens the wax sufficiently for it to make a good seal. Piece of bread or a sandwich. Again, this is a slightly thicker food wrap. Tuck it under, and that will keep fresh for several days. Okay, so we're almost ready to start dipping. So I have here 4 pieces of 100% cotton, pre-washed, and I have just trimmed the edges. They are not totally neat, it doesn't matter. I will neaten them up once they've been dipped. I've got my 4 pods of ready mixed wax. These pods contain beeswax, pine resin, and also jojoba oil. It took me a little while to get the ratio just right, to my liking at least. So that's why I decided to pre-mix them and start selling the ready mixed pods. It's so much quicker and easier if you can just melt them and you're ready to go. I also have my 2 pegs, which I will use for dipping later, a cooling rack here, and some crimping shears to tidy up the edges. So I'm just going to put the pods now on a medium heat. This is obviously a pan that I just use for making beeswax wraps. It came from the charity shop and it does the job beautifully. Okay, so the wax is almost melted, as you can see here. Just a word of caution. First of all, I suggest you wear an apron to protect your clothing, just in case there are any splashes. Take care, don't overheat the wax. You do not want it to start smoking, to get too hot. It's obviously highly flammable as well. If you work on gas, be extra careful, stay with it at all times, and don't overheat it. So I'm just keeping this on a very low heat just to keep it warm and the matte wax all melted. So what I've got here is I have my pegs, obviously to protect my fingers because it does get quite hot, and then I'll just gently put in the piece of cotton. Oops. Swish it around, move it about. I mean, some websites, YouTube videos say, oh, just melt your wax in a baking tray and add the cloth and away you go. Well, I've tried that it doesn't work for me. I really think this is just about the best way. I've also tried painting it on with brushes, but I've just come back to this method. You can clearly see which parts are saturated and which aren't, because the cotton just goes slightly, ever so slightly yellow because of the wax, clearly. So I'm just leaving it to drip here. Or in fact, I could even drip it on here, why not? Because that's going to be my next one. If it's not equally spread or some parts look more saturated than others, it's not a big problem, because I'll show you what you can do later about that. So we're ready for our second piece, and I will do exactly the same as I did before, also with the subsequent pieces. Okay, I have successfully dipped 2 pieces of cotton, but I must admit these are now oversaturated. They hold far too much wax. They are too thick, too stiff. And then I have 2 pieces here, one that's been partly dipped, the other one is completely dry. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to redistribute the wax between the 4 pieces of cotton. I have here a towel that I folded over a few times, a piece of greaseproof paper, baking parchment, it doesn't matter what you use. Then I'm going to put one of the dry, almost dry pieces at the bottom, covered by one of the dipped pieces of cotton, with another dry piece over the top, and finally this final piece that was also dipped. Cover it with more greaseproof paper, and this iron is pretty hot, but obviously because we're protected by the paper it should be absolutely fine. So we're just going to keep gliding the iron backwards and forwards over the paper, and you can see how the colour changes to show where the wax is coming through. I'll then just flip it over and do the same on the other side. And what I will do then is I will just keep, you see, I can see where there is a lot of wax on this end and on the edge, so I can just move the cotton to absorb the extra wax over there. Do make sure you always have the right side of the paper up, because it could make your iron very messy otherwise. So just continue like this for a few minutes, just repositioning the pieces so the dry parts absorb more wax, donated if you like, by the pieces that were oversaturated. Starting to look a lot better. Okay, so I'll see you again in a few minutes when all these pieces have been done. So, to be fair, I think it's probably taken me the best part of 10 minutes to position and reposition the wraps, turn them over, match the drier parts with the excess wax of other wraps. So here you go, this is my last one. 4th wrap, and they're very equally covered now. And to be honest, yes, I'm pretty happy with them. This paper can be used again, which is good. And then as you see, the edges are quite rough, but then I use the crimping shears to neaten them, keep them as a square or make them into keep them as a rectangle or make them into squares or circles. It's up to you then, so you shape whatever shape you want your wraps to be. So even these are larger there, as I say, a generous 40 by probably 23, 24, and I still managed to cover them with the 4 pods. So it's just about heating, redistributing, melting, you know, it doesn't take too long. It's really very, very nice and satisfying to do. And there you go, 4 food wraps that last you a very, very long time. Take care when you wash them that you obviously don't wash them too hot. Lukewarm with a little bit of detergent, and you'll actually see the water drops sitting on the top because in effect the wax waterproofs the material. So after lots of use you will start to see, you know, some patches that might have lost their wax, and then if you make sure, you know, the piece is very dry and clean, you can re-dip it and carry on using it. When it's at the end of its life, you just pop it in your compost and it breaks down eventually, quite naturally. So good luck. Any problems, any questions, please email me, dompickerel@gmail.com. Bye.